The next bill on the agenda is House File 1915. And I will move House File 1915 before the committee. And the motion is, where did it go? That it be re-referred to the Committee on Children and Families, Finance and Policy, which is back to your committee, Chair West. I do see an A2. Would you like me to move the A2? All right.
Madam Chair.
Members, I will move the A2. The A2 is before us. Representative West, can you tell us a little bit about what the A2 does?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, in the time this bill has been sent to this committee, I have learned more than I ever cared to learn about data practices and whatnot, and having not served on Judiciary.
It was fascinating, wasn't it?
Well, I love spending time with Chair Scott, so it was fascinating. This establishes role-based access, audit trails, and adds to a license inspection, a audit of their compliance with this section to respect the privacy and security of the data that is collected by these security cameras. And I would ask members to adopt it so we can begin discussion on the relevant portions of the bill to the committee.
Thank you, Representative West. That's a really good description. Any member discussion on the A2? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the A2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The A2 is adopted. The bill is, House File 1915 is the form that the author wishes. Go ahead and speak to your bill, Representative West.
Thank you, Chair Scott. And thank you to the Judiciary Committee. This bill, I actually didn't give as much thought to the data and the security and audit trails until having to come before this committee, which I guess is why it's a mandatory referral when we touch Chapter 13. So that is a good thing. However, I did think about it in relation to what cameras are being used. So this bill requires daycare centers to have cameras in their infant and toddler rooms, as well as cameras that observe all outdoor areas that are fenced in. And many daycare centers already have cameras currently, but in the case that really brought this up for me is my personal experience, well, my daughter's experience at a daycare center where she was abused. Yesterday, a plea agreement was reached with one of the abusers for 60 days in jail and 10 years probation. So we're moving on successfully to that. And she also admitted to every single, well, pled guilty to 2 felonies, but admitted to the abuse on all infants involved. So have some peace there. But one thing that I had, that the detective stressed, that I have stressed with this bill, is the only reason that we made it to that point, the only reason these people are facing some sort of consequences, I'd argue not a high enough consequence, is because of the camera footage. However, they only kept the footage for a week. So despite a baby having their leg fractured on their watch, they did not get the felony conviction on fracturing the leg. And what? That is such a big deal. And they have a doctor's note. And the families, they've demonstrated the abuse over a long period of time. However, because it's not on video of that particularly happening, it wasn't convicted. And that's because it was beyond the week window. This bill expands it to 60 days. Originally, it was 90 days because 90 is better than 60, but then I realized that is a very expensive burden, and we also have to take that into account, which isn't something for this committee to determine the cost of that, but for children and families, where we're going to send this back to put in our omnibus bill, we have to make sure that this isn't adding to costs of already expensive, costly daycare. And the bill originally had cameras basically everywhere in the facility. We've narrowed it to specifically, and to specifically infant and toddler rooms and where they play outside. And that's because they can't advocate for themselves. I had no idea what was happening to my daughter. And you never assume what's happening. And thank God I never want to see the video. My daughter isn't on the week of video they have, but I would never want to see that happen. So as it pertains to this committee, some daycare centers use Wi-Fi cameras so that parents can observe their children remotely. This bill does not require Wi-Fi or closed circuit. There's been a discussion about requiring closed circuit. Closed circuit's what I'd recommend. The only reason this bill doesn't require closed circuit is because I think it would be a little bit unfair for the centers that do comply already to have to then switch out their cameras. But that is a discussion I think will continue to be had because I want this bill to become law. And I guess that's 1916. So that eliminates a significant security concern if they go with the closed circuit systems, which is what I'd recommend, because Wi-Fi cameras are incredibly easy to break into. Any enterprising 16-year-old could do so. While they have control of the footage, it'll be role-based access. I imagine that will be directors and assistant directors, usually in a daycare center situation. And the software you can use for this 90-day retention, they have many different logging systems that can work on compliance with this audit trail amendment that came in so that it doesn't add additional costs. The 60-day retention period is very affordable. I couldn't find an affordable option for 90 days, but 60 days is really important. I talked to the department as well about having enough time to prove the fraud crime. This also requires the center to have a written policy on the locations monitored by these cameras so that families are aware whether the areas where their children will be are monitored by cameras. I actually think it's kind of strange to be concerned about being monitored by cameras for your children because that's, with my experience, that's the only way you'd ever get justice if something happens. But even so, your children can be seen in Target. A weirdo can sit in a public parking lot and film your children as they go into the facility. But we do want to make sure these cameras are secure. So with the role-based access and audit trails, and now with the inspectors also checking that these centers are complying with these requirements, we can ensure the data is secured. The only time the data is accessible outside of a police investigation is if there's a disciplinary action where the footage is being used on an employee, they are entitled to have access to the footage because it's evidence against them in some sort of disciplinary proceeding. The other time where the video is able to be seen but not transmitted, only viewed, they do not obtain a copy of, is when a parent's child has been harmed at the center and that harm is documented. So what that means is they brought their child for treatment from a doctor, and the doctor has indicated that there was harm caused. There's visible bruises or marks that persist for more than 24 hours. And there was one more. I've said this so many times. Or there's a physical impediment like a limp that didn't exist previously. Obviously, that'd be a massive concern for any parent. So they are able to view the footage. They are not able to have a copy of it. The centers also asked for language that allowed them to use footage for training. And that is in here with a specific requirement that they need to redact any identifying information of individuals in the room unless they have signed a specific consent form. I believe I have covered everything related to the committee, and I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chair West. Thank you, Chair West. I believe there are some testifiers. I have 3 testifiers that have signed up. The first one is Janice DeGonda, and on deck is Suzanne Dickinson. If you could both come up to the testifiers table, we can keep this thing running smoothly. And then when Janice is finished, we will have Josh Truax come up. So Janice, you're the first one. Please introduce yourself for the tape and go ahead with your testimony.
Okay. My name is Janice DeGonda, and before I get into it, I just wanted to thank Representative Nolan for all the changes that he's trying to make, as well as Representative Feist and Chair Liebling for co-authorizing this bill. I have a 1-year-old daughter who was also abused at the daycare as Representative West's. At the time of the abuse, she was 5 months old, but gestationally she was 3 months old, as I had to deliver 2 months early due to severe preeclampsia. After 37 days in the NICU learning how to be first-time parents to a premature baby, we were finally able to bring her home, which then she had to attend daycare a few weeks later. We found the daycare and appreciated the security of the building, the small classroom ratios, and that they had cameras, as having cameras was a big factor for us. After a month attending, our daughter started coming home with bruises, abrasions, or scratches. Every time we noticed a mark, we would ask the daycare about it. We were always told the same thing. She must be getting pinched from the infant swing clip. The Velcro from her sleep sack caused the scratch. Her infant chair caused it, her nails being too long, or just being told that they did not see what caused it, so that they did not know. And at the time, those seemed like likely excuses. We did not think about questioning it too much, as these were people paid to protect my child, along with all the other children, and that there were cameras. Surely if something was wrong, it would be noticed. We thought that the cameras were being watched closely to protect the children attending the daycare in all the rooms. We then had a phone conversation with the director in June about our concerns. She kept coming home with marks, and they kept having issues feeding her, so much so that we brought her to the doctor to see if she had infant GERD. After that conversation, the marks suddenly stopped until July. We did not notice the significant bruising until we were home and doing a diaper change, as that they were covered by her clothes. They were on her legs, her stomach, her groin, and her butt. This is what caused us to bring her to the hospital to get checked out and what started this investigation. We received a phone call from the detective doing the investigation, who let us know that our daughter was seen on camera along with 2 other babies being abused. Then to find out that the daycare only kept the footage for a week at a time. This is highly unacceptable. As Representative West mentioned, the detective yesterday said that without this footage, we would not be where we are, and we would not already have the plea for one of the abusers. The camera footage needs to be kept longer, if not for abuse reasons, but simply for training opportunities for the staff. If this daycare had kept it for much longer, I am certain that this investigation would not be still ongoing. There are over a dozen families involved with this case, but only 5 of us with charges as due to having the footage. And some families aren't even able to get charges added on due to having no video evidence. There would be more charges, more families with questions answered, and more families getting justice for their children. We need to be able to feel free. We need to be able to feel safe that our children are safe when they are not in our care. And if questions arise on their safety, we need to be able to see what is going on. We must protect them at all costs, and this is the start of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. DeGonda. I am so sorry this happened to your baby, and it's unconscionable. And I'm a new Nana of 2, both of whom are 3 months old, and I can't even imagine treating a vulnerable little baby like that. Thank you for your testimony, and I hope that justice is served here. Our next testifier is Suzanne Dickinson. Please introduce yourself for the tape and go ahead with your testimony.
My name is Suzanne Dickinson. I am Janice DeGonda's mother and the Nana of her daughter. As I prepare for these days, all I feel is anger. Everywhere we go today, we are on some kind of a video. Cameras have proved crimes or disproved crimes. I was truly shocked to learn that daycares are not required to even have cameras. My granddaughter was abused at Small World Learning Center last July. She was 9 weeks premature and did not even weigh 4 pounds. She was 5 months old when the worst of the abuse was reported to police and Child Protection while we were at the emergency room with her. The daycare was aware she was to be treated as a 3-month-old premature immobile infant. We are fortunate that the most severe incident was obtained by the police while we were still at the hospital, more so because it deletes after 7 days. In the police report and court cases, my granddaughter is referred to as Infant 1. To me, she's my heart, my namesake, and as I call her, my little bird. We hope to see justice done to her abusers. Again, as everyone has said, we were told yesterday, if not for the video, there would be no charges at all. My granddaughter could have had permanent brain damage from being hit, her head on the floor. Due to deletion of video after a week, we'll never truly know of all the other incidents of abuse. And then my anger rises as I know there are over a dozen other victims in the case who don't even have hope of any kind of justice. The unknown has personally caused me nightmares since her abusers were arrested. Having the opportunity to review incidents causing injury should be available for parents, because that unknown is hell to live with. Remembering these victims are unable to do anything except cry and scream in fear and pain, I ask all of you to please help by mandating cameras to support the children and the workers so they are not wrongly accused. The length of said video should be kept and giving the parents the right to see it. Thank you, Representative Feist and Chair Liebling, for co-authoring this bill, and thank you, Representative West, for letting us even speak and make something out of this.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Truax, go ahead and introduce yourself for the tape, and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Truax. Thank you, Judiciary Committee and Representative Nolan West, for having me here today. I wrote my speech on my phone. So
That's fine.
if I stare down a lot, I apologize. My name is Josh, and my son was enrolled in a facility where he was verbally abused and physically manhandled on February 6th of this year, while 19 other children were there to witness these repeated acts on almost a daily basis. I am here today because I and others recognize an urgent need for reform in our daycare system, an industry entrusted with the well-being of our youngest and most vulnerable children, and the safety of our children is not just a priority, it's a fundamental right. Yet time and again, we hear heartbreaking stories of neglect, mistreatment, and abuse within daycare facilities, such as what happened to my son on February 6th and last July at Small World. The unfortunate truth is that without proper oversight, these violations too often go unseen and unaddressed. It's time for real change, it's time for accountability, and I'm calling on you guys to help make a difference today. One of the most effective tools to protect our children and provide transparency is the installation of camera with audio at minimum in all baby and toddler rooms. These early years are the most crucial in a child's development, yet infants and toddlers cannot speak for themselves. With recorded footage, we empower parents, facility directors, and authorities to ensure that every child is receiving the care that they deserve. Daycare safety does not stop at the classroom doors. Outdoor play areas are common places for injuries, accidents, and potential misconduct. By requiring cameras in these spaces, we provide an extra layer of protection and ensure that no corner of a daycare facility becomes a blind spot for mistreatment or harm. Parents deserve the peace of mind that comes with knowing that their child is in a safe and nurturing environment. By allowing parents to review footage upon request, we are not only fostering trust, but encouraging daycares to uphold the highest standards of care. A responsible daycare should have nothing to hide. This measure is not about micromanaging, it's about ensuring that every child is treated with the respect and kindness that they deserve. Requiring footage to be retained for at least 60 days and extending that period to 6 months if injuries occur is a crucial safeguard against injustice. Too often, concerns arise weeks after an incident, and without video evidence, the truth remains elusive. This policy will ensure that proper investigations can take place, preventing abusers from escaping accountability, while also allowing innocent caregivers to clear their names when wrongly accused. In conclusion, we must ask ourselves this: what kind of society do we want to build for our children? One where mistreatment is hidden behind closed doors? Sorry. Or one where transparency and accountability are non-negotiable? By implementing these common sense reforms, cameras with audio, outdoor surveillance, parental access, and extended footage retention, we are taking a powerful stand for our children's safety and well-being. Let us not wait for another tragic story to spur us into action. Let's act now, and for the sake of our children and for the peace of mind of every parent who entrusts a daycare with their most precious gift. In comparison to the testimonies here today, they stated that their center retained video footage for a week. Mine was 5 days. Please support House File 1915.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to testify on this bill? Seeing none, we'll go to member questions. Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not the first time that's happened. I want to thank you for bringing this bill and the other bills that you've brought. I have a story that I've never shared publicly before, that my son, when he was 2, had marks from a daycare center. We reported it, and they claimed that he was fell out of a little toddler house and that he got stuck, and that's what caused the marks. They were fingerprints. And had the cameras been in place in his room, I'm sure that we could have moved ahead with holding the people accountable who did that. I'll just note, too, that we put cameras in assisted living facilities, or allowed for the use of cameras in assisted living facilities, and I've heard that it's been extremely helpful. And so I feel like when there are vulnerable populations, like elders who might be in assisted living facilities or children, it really makes a lot of sense. So I'll be signing on to your bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. Really briefly, Chair
Madam
West.
Chair, on the assisted living note, that's also where trying to figure out what was reasonable for retention. The retention rates are much longer in those facilities than in the other two.
Thank
it's
you.
a natural thing.
Do you want the last one? Sure. Representative Feist.
I'm not near my mic. Thank you so much, Chair West, for all of your work on this bill. The situation, that at your daycare also impacted a family from my community, and I'm grateful that you reached out to me and invited me into your process. I had the opportunity to sit in on pretty intense listening session, but it was really important feedback that created the framework for this bill, and to see all of the additional work that you've done to make sure that it's workable and can achieve its goals, and then appreciate all the audit trails and data. The data nerds in Judiciary appreciate that. So I'm so sorry for what your family has gone through, and thank you for working so hard to find a legislative solution to protect other children.
Thank you. Representative Liebling, Chair Liebling.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative West, I'm so proud to be a co-author on the bill, and thank you. And I wanted to sign on to your bill just because, when you're a parent, and, I've sent kids to different kinds of daycare, and now I have grandchildren who've gone to different kinds of daycare. I mean, being a parent is like having your heart be outside your body walking around. And it's pretty terrifying when your child goes off somewhere without you, especially when they don't have the ability to tell you what's going on. And so that's why I was really compelled to sign on to your bill. And as Representative Feist said, thank you so much for working on the details of this to make the bill better. I think it's important for us to acknowledge, even though we're the data committee here and not the child care committee, but we know that most child care providers are not abusing children, and they are good. But we do have this problem that we are sending our very vulnerable, precious young kids into somebody else's care. And I'm so glad you're working on this bill, and I appreciate it so much, but I hope that we can find ways to actually expand this, because any child going to the care of someone they're not related to really needs the same protection. And I'm also a little, when my kids or my grandkids have been in a daycare where the parents could check in on them in real time, that's something that I would really love to see. And I know there's technical issues. I know there are all kinds of problems in this space. I know there are cost issues. I appreciate that your committee is going to work on this some more and figure out how to make this work. But having the ability for parents to look in real time is more toward the prevention even. I mean, that's something I'm struggling with a little bit here. We do need to be able to catch it. Thank God, in your case, somebody is not going to be there abusing more children. That is prevention too. And I'm so glad that we have the ability to prosecute that. But I would also love to see a situation where parents can check in real time and watch their child randomly. And that would be, to me, an even better way to prevent this from happening. And I know a lot of parents would love to have that comfort to be able to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments and really appreciate your working to try to get the data pieces figured out. And I know this has a lot more figuring out to do because I saw some of the comments from daycare providers, and we do have to make it work. And I know daycare is an extraordinarily complicated area, which is why it has a committee focused on it. So just thank you so much for all your work on this.
Chair West, I too thank you for your work on this, and I want to thank Mr. Hopkins for getting the amendment and everything in the shape that it is today. And, our prayers that no other kid is ever abused, but at least we have some safeguards now, and we can, maybe some parents that have questions about how bruises showed up will have some answers now. With that, any final comments, Chair West?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for all the comments and support. It is very much appreciated. On the Wi-Fi access is just a very difficult thing to manage securely. And actually, we'll have a little bit of a discussion on what it's like to transmit data in the next bill, 1916, or whatever, I forget the order we were doing. But I cannot say, this has been an awful situation, but I also feel so lucky that I get to do something about it. It's good for my mental state, and I feel privileged to be able to help other people express, because I'm sure a lot of people have contacted their representatives and just goes into the ether because we're busy and whatnot, but it's been an honor to be able to give a voice to more than just myself. But thank you for the support.
Thank you, Chair West. Seeing no further discussion, I renew my motion that House File 1915 as amended be recommended to be re-referred to the Committee on Children and Families, Finance and Policy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is adopted. You're on your way back to your own committee.